again, I'm just amazed at how wide-ranging this movement is becoming. I mean, I just was trolling YouTube for information, the latest, what's been going on this weekend, and there's just well, first of all, the United States is so big, it's so diverse anyway, and now it's got this amazing diversity of response.
And we're all linked in by the internet. That's the beauty of it. I mean, if something, because I've just been monitoring Facebook a lot more than I have, just watching, for the developments. And I mean, when something happens, and I click share, and other people do, it spreads internationally. And you can find out what's happening, say, in Denver from the Occupy London Stock Exchange. I subscribe to their Facebook page as well. So I'm learning from London what's happening in Denver, while it's happening. And then you got those live streams, which is a good thing, because I tell you, the mainstream media would rather not record. Well, let's say that their masters would rather not let them cover it. And did you see the coverage of the Washington Post of the Oakland cop ride?
The kitten.
The cop petting the kitten. Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. Speaking of the internet, of course, is this big emergency alert that they're going to do the temporary taking over of all the communications for a test. That's going to be pretty strange.
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling that things could change here very rapidly with regard, because we're I saw a good sign somewhere that said my fathers fought Nazism with guns, and my ancestors fought the American Revolution with muskets, but we're fighting it with Facebook and Twitter. That's true until they take it away from us.
Yeah. But there's so much diversity in the response to Occupy around the United States, and even in Kentucky, this Kentucky Public Television round robin. It's like the McNeil-Lehrer Hour or something.
It may re-energize a movement that would on its own sort of go away, as Steve points out, when it gets cold.
It also seems to me that this group really faces some serious challenges, and that is, what do they really stand for? I had a couple of their leaders on the radio show last week, and they were good about talking about the energy and the enthusiasm and their concerns over the strength of corporate America. But this is a group that really doesn't have clearly defined goals, Nick. It doesn't have clearly defined leaders, and those kinds of things are what you need for any political group to sort of take root and grow and take off. And without that, I think they're going to struggle.
Stacey, I'd argue this isn't a political movement, though. This is frustration, and the people who started this in Wall Street weren't looking to start a political party. And I think we want such an easy, clear message of what these people want in Egypt, the Arab Spring. They wanted Mubarak gone. But here, really, it is pretty simple. They want corporations and their funding out of the political process. They want fair banking regulations. They don't want debt redistribution. They just want an equal playing field for people that can go and maybe look at the American dream again. And I don't know why we in the media have to have 10 points of order that they want in order to cover these movements on a broader scale. There is a lot at play here, and just because these are youth, these are people who are disenfranchised, we sort of want to play back and say, well, they're not playing by the rules. They're not a political movement. They're not a political movement. This is frustration growing from people who've been disenfranchised a long time ago, or who are coming to the process as college students with huge debts and can't pay those debts off with a $9 an hour job.
Yes, and certainly there is this frustration of wealthy getting wealthier and those being left behind, that is part of this, and the sense of buying.
Yeah, I'm glad there was one guy.
Yeah, it was well said. People are just angry about all these things. There's a long list of grievances. There's no mystery to what this is about. Just read the signs, and people are angry, and they just, they want their leaders to act like leaders and do something about it. The people that we elected to actually serve us. But it's obvious who our so-called leaders actually serve, and it ain't us. And, getting the money out of politics sounds good.
But can you get the politics out of the money?
Yeah. But clearly, something is really, really wrong with our political system because we've got just open criminality. The corruption and criminality have been there all along, but it has just incrementally increased.
Geometrically.
Yeah, I mean, and the offenses against freedom have just escalated and escalated, and again the old analogy of the pots in the kettle of boiling water. It's just, and people have just come to acclimatize themselves to more and more and more oppression. But it's finally reached a breaking point, and well, what happens next? I don't know. Like you were saying, we could probably expect these crackdowns to come in waves, but what form are they going to take? What kind of false flag provocateur, crap are they going to use next that could really, really possibly cripple the movement? I don't know.
Again,
but they're capable of anything.
But there's so many of them.
Yeah.
There's no way,
that's the beauty of it.
How can there's no way that they can taint the entire movement?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not one group of people. It's not one geographic area.
Mm-hmm. And people are openly saying more and more. You're hearing it talked about. Even they'll interview somebody in the mainstream media, and they're saying, we're concerned about provocateurs. The people being planted here to do something. So there's more awareness of that kind of COINTELPRO activity and so forth. Well, yes, the beauty of it is that it's huge. It is worldwide, and the other thing is that attempts to crack down in the ordinary way have only galvanized it. But I'll tell you, coming up with an emergency that would justify shutting down the internet would certainly do some harm. There's all kinds of tricks I'm sure they've got up their sleeves.
Yeah, we have been wondering and worrying about the possibility of a false flag cyber 9/11. They've been threatening, and this upcoming emergency communications test, that could be very telling.
They could stage something and blame it on Anonymous, for instance. And the Brad blog article I mentioned on Robert's show, where the former HB Gary guy who was trying to work with the U.S. Department of Chamber of Commerce to infiltrate and expose Anonymous, or rather the WikiLeaks, or both folks, and he was ousted because of them turning the tables, putting all his criminality and his emails out there. And apparently now he's been palling around with an FBI snitch who's infiltrated Occupy NYC, the Wall Street, or the original Occupy Wall Street folks. And so there are these shenanigans going on. There's also that important article, that video investigation that Greg Palast did on for Democracy Now! That talks about the pullout of Goldman Sachs from the low-income bank, that they're required by law under the agreement of the bailouts that gave them all that money, that they're supposed to be putting a certain amount of it back into these banks to serve low-income people, and they've withdrawn that support and have turned it into a political situation where they're not holding up their end of the bargain. Those kinds of things, I think, are where we need they're the pressure points, because they are the most obvious instances of here's where corporations are not being held accountable for criminal activity or to the letter of the law in the contract. And the robo-signing of foreclosures and what have you. Did you see, I believe everybody's seen it by now, but the photos that were leaked from this foreclosure mill, as it's called, a law firm in New York that has been under investigation for a number of abuses, where they held a Halloween party a year ago, and everybody dressed up.
Oh, is that what I did post that? I wasn't sure what that was.
Those are not real homeless people. Those are a couple of people that work at this foreclosure firm, and they're mocking the people that they foreclose on. That says something about how the sign she's holding says, "I was never served." Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they say that that's a frequent excuse that people get. "I was never served." Well, they're just mocking that. That they are illegally, criminally, foreclosing on people. And treating people terribly, not giving them options, not helping to work out mortgage modifications and so forth. And this series of photos, which was leaked and just published just the past week, show, this is how they look at it, with outright contempt. These, I guess, people lacking a soul, sadistic, sociopathic individuals that work for these firms, like people who work for debt collectors. There's another story that's come out recently about how there's a crackdown. This is coming from the federal government, the FTC cracking down on some abuses of debt collection agencies, which I tell you, it's a huge problem and has been going on for years. And of course, it's only got worse and worse and worse because people don't have any money to pay back, the credit card payment or whatever it was that got them in trouble. And of course, bankruptcy is harder to do now. So you've got debt collectors who, for instance, there have been instances where they were collecting for cost of funerals, and telling a mother that, well, how would you feel if we just dug up your daughter and put her on your doorstep? That kind of thing. We're talking about people who they may not be the people that this is their job. They may not be part of the 1% themselves, or these individuals here. These two gals, because they work at this company, but they've adapted the attitude of their boss. That they may not be part of the 1%, but they're not part of the 99% either, like a lot of these cops out there, because they have sort of excommunicated themselves not only from being called Americans, but from the human race. That's the kind of sick attitude that you discover over and over and over again in these firms. There is a culture of just arrogance and ugliness, and there's a culture, I'm afraid, in our militarized police. It's a culture of just sadism and bullying. And there's a great article in Esquire, which is somewhere in our list of links here, which talks about the militarization of the police, which we've been talking about now for quite some time, and it's been going on, as this article points out, for years and years, all gearing up to this. And it's been one of these things that's been ramped up incrementally, again, the frogs boiling in the pot. And to where people think, well, it's just normal for the cops to go around and just kicking in the wrong door. The other day in Seattle, they go in and raid a man's house, demolish the entire place for 2 marijuana plants, which they end up not confiscating after all. That kind of thing goes on and on and on. The culture of just sadistic, jackbooted thuggery. And, that, to me, means these people aren't even members of the human race. That is contemptible. And how are we going to get past that culture? I don't know, but there's got to be some good cops out there in there that can subvert from within. We need you. Come over to our side.
Yeah, well, they need to all go show their faces at the Occupy police.
And don't just give lip service. Do like the police chief there in Albany, New York. Say no. Just say no to the police state. Police.